Growing up is supposed to be simple. We pass through childhood, stumble through adolescence, and then, by some invisible law of nature, we're expected to arrive at adulthood, responsible, mature, capable of making decisions. But reality is far less tidy. Many people carry traces of childhood into their adult years, not just in the form of fond memories or youthful playfulness, but as entire patterns of behavior, attitudes, and fears that belong to a stage long left behind. This is what we call infantilism, a refusal, or perhaps an inability, to grow up. Infantilism does not always appear in obvious ways. It isn't only about someone who refuses to pay their own bills or lives forever in their parents' house. Sometimes it is hidden in subtle details: the person who avoids responsibility by blaming everyone else, the adult who cannot handle criticism without throwing tantrums, the dreamer who keeps waiting for someone to save them. It can be masked by charm, humor, or even ambition, but it reveals itself in moments of stress, failure, or conflict. The modern world has, in some sense, made infantilism easy. Many comforts allow people to delay maturity: credit systems that let us buy what we cannot afford, technology that distracts us from confronting problems, and social structures that often forgive irresponsibility. But just because society allows it doesn't mean it leads to happiness. In fact, infantilism often creates deep dissatisfaction. A person stuck in this state feels restless, lost, unfulfilled. They may laugh loudly at parties, but inside they are uneasy, sensing that life is slipping away while they stand still. Growing up, truly growing up, is not about losing joy, spontaneity, or creativity. It's about learning to take responsibility for yourself, your actions, your choices, your emotions, and your future. It is about standing on your own feet, no longer expecting others to carry your weight or fix your mistakes. It is about becoming someone who can be relied upon, not only by others, but by yourself. This book is not a lecture or a set of cold psychological definitions. It is a guide for those who suspect that they have not yet fully grown into adulthood, even if the calendar insists they should have by now. It is written for those who sometimes feel embarrassed by their own helplessness, who repeat the same mistakes, or who long to feel stronger and more independent but don't know how to start. We will explore what infantilism looks like in everyday life and why it happens in the first place. More importantly, we will discover the steps that lead out of it. You will see that maturity is not a sudden transformation but a series of conscious decisions, each one pulling you away from dependency and closer to strength. The path is not easy, but it is real, and it leads to a kind of freedom that cannot be substituted by comfort, excuses, or fantasy. Every chapter of this book will bring you closer to that freedom. We will talk about the habits that keep you small, the lies you tell yourself, and the fears that hold you back. And then, we will talk about what to do instead, how to act differently, how to think differently, how to finally take charge of your own life. Perhaps, as you read, you will feel uncomfortable. That is a good sign. Discomfort is the first step toward change. Children seek comfort, adults accept discomfort as part of growth. If you are willing to face the truth, even when it stings, you already hold the first tool to becoming the adult you want to be. So let us begin this journey together. Let us look closely at the ways infantilism shows itself, and then let us move, step by step, toward a stronger, freer, more grounded version of yourself. By the end of this book, you may not feel that you have arrived at some final stage of maturity, because growing never really ends, but you will no longer be stuck. You will know how to grow, and you will finally be walking forward. Chapter 1. To understand infantilism, we first need to see it in ourselves. Not in the abstract, not as a label we put on others, but in the small, uncomfortable truths that live inside our own daily lives. It is easy to spot a childish attitude in someone else, the coworker who complains instead of fixing problems, the friend who makes endless excuses, the sibling who never takes responsibility. But it is harder to admit the same behaviors when they are ours. Infantilism often hides behind habits that seem innocent, even normal. Think of procrastination. On the surface, it is just delaying a task. But behind it, there is often a child's hope that problems will somehow disappear if we ignore them long enough. Children do this naturally. They cover their eyes, believing the world will vanish. Adults who procrastinate are not so different. They postpone responsibility, telling themselves there will always be tomorrow. Another common sign is blame shifting. A child points at their sibling. It wasn't me, it was him. Adults trapped in infantilism do the same, though in more sophisticated ways. They blame their boss, the economy, their partner, or even fate for everything that goes wrong. This refusal to accept personal responsibility keeps them in a permanent state of helplessness, because if everything depends on external forces, they are never required to change themselves. Then there is emotional dependency. A child cannot survive without others' care and approval. An infantile adult constantly seeks validation, terrified of standing alone. They cannot bear criticism, and when someone disapproves of them, it feels like the end of the world. Such a person may appear strong in moments of joy, but their inner stability collapses at the slightest sign of rejection. Of course, we all have moments when we act like children. Maturity does not mean we never procrastinate, never feel fragile, or never want support. The difference lies in whether these moments control us or whether we are capable of controlling them. Infantilism is not about the occasional weakness, it is about a lifestyle built around avoiding adulthood. Why does this happen? The roots are often found in childhood itself. Some people were overprotected, raised in families where every difficulty was solved for them. Others were neglected, never given the chance to develop responsibility. In both cases, the adult that grows from such soil carries unresolved patterns. Society also plays a role. In cultures where comfort is easily available, where responsibilities can be postponed indefinitely, it is tempting to stay small forever. But here lies the paradox: staying small is not truly comfortable. Infantilism promises safety, but it delivers anxiety. It whispers, "Don't take risks, stay where you are," but then punishes you with emptiness, regret, and dissatisfaction. The child inside may feel safe for a moment, but the adult you are meant to become feels suffocated. That is why many people, even those who seem carefree on the outside, struggle with quiet frustration on the inside. The first step to breaking this cycle is recognition. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Begin by asking yourself honest questions. Do I often expect others to solve my problems? Do I make excuses instead of taking action? Do I collapse under criticism instead of learning from it? Do I chase approval more than I chase growth? Each yes is a sign of where your childish patterns still live. Do not answer these questions with shame. Shame belongs to the child who fears punishment. An adult answers with honesty and readiness to improve. Seeing the truth is not a condemnation, it is the opening of a door. Every weakness you identify becomes a place where growth is possible. At this point, you may feel resistance. A voice inside may say, "This isn't me. I'm fine." That is the voice of infantilism, trying to defend itself. It prefers excuses to change, because change requires effort and discomfort. But if you silence that voice for just a moment, you will notice another voice, quieter yet deeper. It is the part of you that longs to grow, that knows you are capable of more. That voice has been waiting for you to listen. Adulthood, in its truest sense, begins when you decide to take ownership. Ownership of your time, your choices, your mistakes, your emotions. This is not something anyone else can do for you. No partner, no parent, no mentor can step inside your life and carry your responsibilities forever. If you do not take them up yourself, they simply remain undone. So here, at the beginning of this journey, the challenge is simple but difficult. Admit where you are still a child. Not to others, not to prove anything, but to yourself. Write it down if you must. Confront the patterns you see. The act of naming them is already an act of adulthood. You are not alone in this struggle. Most people, if they are honest, carry pieces of infantilism within them. The difference between those who remain stuck and those who grow is the decision to confront it. That decision, fragile though it may feel, changes everything. It turns you from a passive character in your own life into an active one. Growing up does not mean erasing the child within you. That child carries creativity, wonder, and playfulness, qualities worth keeping. What must be left behind is the helplessness, the avoidance, the endless waiting for someone else to take charge. The child within you can live on as a source of joy, but the adult must hold the steering wheel. The first real step, then, is awareness. And awareness, if you let it, will spark action. The chapters ahead will show you what that action looks like: practical, real, sometimes uncomfortable, but always leading toward strength. The journey has begun, and it begins with honesty. You see the child inside you, and you are ready, finally, to grow. Chapter 2. Adulthood is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as a dull stage of life, filled with obligations, bills, and the death of joy. This is one of the main reasons people cling to childish patterns. They equate growing up with losing freedom. But the truth is the opposite. Infantilism keeps you trapped in dependency, while maturity brings a deeper form of freedom. To see this clearly, we need to redefine what adulthood actually means. Being an adult is not about age. There are people in their 40s who still live like children, and there are teenagers who take on enormous responsibility with surprising strength. Nor is adulthood simply about having a job, paying rent, or having children. Those things can force you into responsibility, but they do not guarantee true maturity. Real adulthood is an inner state. It is the ability to take ownership of your life without constantly running away from it. One of the clearest markers of maturity is responsibility. This word is often misunderstood, as if it means carrying a heavy burden, joylessly trudging through life. But responsibility is not punishment, it is power. When you take responsibility for your choices, you reclaim control. You stop being a victim of circumstances. Yes, life will always bring difficulties, but a mature person sees those difficulties not as unfair punishment but as challenges to be solved. Children depend on others to fix things for them. If a toy breaks, they cry until someone else repairs it. If they fall, they expect someone else to pick them up. Adults may still feel the sting of broken things and failures, but they know it is their task to rise and rebuild. This shift, from expecting rescue to expecting self-reliance, is what makes adulthood liberating. Another essential quality is emotional regulation. A child feels something and immediately expresses it, often dramatically. Anger becomes screaming, sadness becomes tears, frustration becomes tantrums. This is natural for children, because they have not yet learned control. But when the same patterns remain in adults, life becomes unstable. People around them feel they are walking on eggshells, never knowing when an outburst will erupt. Maturity does not mean you suppress emotions, it means you manage them. You still feel anger, sadness, and frustration, but you choose how to respond instead of being dragged by the emotion like a helpless passenger. self-reliance also defines maturity. This does not mean isolating yourself or refusing help. It means you are capable of standing on your own when needed. A mature person can support themselves financially, emotionally, and practically. They are not paralyzed without constant guidance. Of course, they may still lean on others in times of crisis. That is part of being human, but they do not live in a permanent state of dependency. There is also an important aspect that is often overlooked: the ability to delay gratification. Children live in the present moment. If they want something, they want it now. Adults learn to think beyond the immediate desire. They understand that not every craving needs to be satisfied instantly, and sometimes the best rewards come later. This ability to postpone pleasure in order to build something greater is the foundation of long-term success, whether in career, relationships, or personal growth. But perhaps the deepest marker of adulthood is the capacity to make choices without guarantees. Children look for certainty. They want someone to tell them what is right, what is safe, what will definitely work. Adults realize that certainty is rare. Decisions often come with risk, and no one can promise a perfect outcome. To be an adult is to act anyway, even when the ground feels unstable. It is to choose, knowing that mistakes are possible, and to carry the consequences with dignity. So why do so many avoid this state? Because it feels frightening. To take responsibility, regulate emotions, rely on yourself, delay gratification, and make uncertain choices, this all requires courage. Infantilism offers an easier path, at least on the surface. Stay small, stay dependent, and let others carry the burden. But that path slowly eats away at your dignity. It leaves you powerless, resentful, and stuck. The good news is that adulthood is not an all-or-nothing state. You grow into it step by step, by practicing these qualities in daily life. Start small. When something goes wrong, resist the urge to immediately blame others. Ask instead, what can I do differently? When emotions rise, pause before reacting, choose a calmer response. When you want to indulge instantly, wait a little longer, train the muscle of patience. Each small act strengthens the adult within you. Over time, these choices add up. You begin to feel a new kind of stability, a sense that you can handle life even when it is messy. You stop waiting for others to save you, and in doing so, you discover a freedom far greater than childish avoidance could ever provide. Adulthood, then, is not a prison, it is a key. It unlocks the ability to shape your life according to your values instead of drifting along in helplessness. The child within you may resist, whispering that responsibility is too heavy, that freedom means running from problems. But now you know the truth. Real freedom comes only when you are strong enough to face life on your own terms. And this is what we will continue to explore: how to leave behind the illusions of childish safety and step fully into the power of maturity. Chapter 3. If we want to outgrow infantilism, we need to face one uncomfortable truth: many of the childish habits we still carry are not accidents. They are patterns we've rehearsed for years, sometimes decades. We cling to them because they feel safe, even when they quietly ruin our lives. To move forward, we must look directly at these habits, expose them, and understand how they keep us stuck. One of the most destructive habits is avoidance. Children avoid unpleasant things, homework, chores, responsibility, by pretending they don't exist. Adults, however, often do the same. We avoid difficult conversations, financial planning, health checkups, or any task that reminds us we are responsible for our own future. Avoidance feels comfortable in the short term, but it always breeds bigger problems. Bills pile up, relationships decay, opportunities vanish. Avoidance is the child's shield, but for an adult, it becomes a prison. Another pattern is the addiction to excuses. A child learns quickly that if they can come up with a reason, any reason, they might escape punishment. "I didn't hear you, it's not my fault, he started it." Adults carry this strategy into their lives, developing sophisticated justifications for everything. They convince themselves that they can't change jobs because the economy is bad, that they can't save money because they don't earn enough, that they can't exercise because they're too tired. While excuses may protect the ego from feeling guilty, they also prevent growth. The more convincing the excuse, the deeper the stagnation. Closely linked to this is the fantasy of rescue. Many people secretly wait for someone else to solve their problems, a partner, a mentor, a stroke of luck. This is a deeply childish mindset. In fairy tales, the hero is often saved by magic. In real life, waiting for rescue only leads to disappointment. Adults who cling to this fantasy waste precious time, sitting passively instead of acting. True growth begins only when you accept that no one is coming to save you, and that you don't need saving. Another form of infantilism hides in emotional overreaction. We may not throw tantrums like children, but many adults throw subtler ones. Passive-aggressive remarks, dramatic exits, cold silences, or exaggerated complaints. These are just adult versions of stomping feet and crying until someone gives in. The cost is enormous. Emotional outbursts damage relationships, erode trust, and prevent honest communication. A mature person learns to process emotions internally before expressing them outwardly. Dependency also plays a major role. It may not always look like living with parents into adulthood, though that can be one expression, but it can appear in many other ways. Some people are financially dependent on a partner, emotionally dependent on constant praise, or mentally dependent on being told what to do. Dependency feels comfortable because it spares us from responsibility, but it also chains us to others' moods, opinions, and decisions. Until we learn to stand independently, we are never truly free. Then there is the habit of instant gratification. A child wants a sweet, a toy, or attention, and they want it now. Adults fall into the same trap with impulse spending, scrolling endlessly on their phones, binge watching instead of working, or abandoning goals because they require patience. Infantilism thrives in a culture of convenience, where everything is designed to be fast, easy, and instantly rewarding. But every time we choose instant gratification over discipline, we reinforce the child inside us who cannot wait, who cannot build. It is important to recognize that these patterns are not signs of weakness or stupidity. They are human. Almost everyone falls into them at some point. The problem is not that they exist, it is when they become our default way of living. Infantilism is not about the occasional excuse or outburst, it is about a life built on avoidance, dependency, and fantasy. The good news is that habits can be changed. But change begins with awareness. Most people do not even notice when they are making excuses, avoiding problems, or chasing instant gratification. They believe their own stories. That is why the first task is to catch yourself in the act. When you procrastinate, ask, what am I really avoiding? When you make an excuse, ask, what am I protecting myself from admitting? When you crave instant pleasure, ask, what long-term result am I sacrificing for this moment? This kind of self-questioning is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. The moment you notice a childish pattern, you weaken its power. It no longer controls you in the dark, it is dragged into the light. From there, you can choose differently. Do not expect perfection. The child within you will not disappear overnight. Even mature adults have moments of weakness. What matters is not erasing the child but refusing to let it run your life. Each time you replace avoidance with action, excuses with honesty, dependency with independence, and instant gratification with patience, you strengthen your adult self. Think of it as building a muscle. At first, it feels unnatural, heavy, even painful. But with practice, it becomes easier. Eventually, it becomes your new normal. That is how growth works, not in a sudden leap, but in steady, deliberate steps. Infantilism thrives in unawareness, excuses, and fantasy. Adulthood thrives in awareness, responsibility, and truth. Every day, you are choosing which side you strengthen. And every small choice matters. Chapter 4. Behind every childish behavior lies a fear. Infantilism is not only about laziness or comfort, it is about avoiding the anxieties that come with adulthood. To outgrow it, we must understand what these fears are, because as long as they remain unspoken, they control us in silence. One of the strongest fears is the fear of responsibility itself. Responsibility means being the one who must act, decide, and bear the consequences. For many, this feels terrifying because it removes the safety net of blaming others. As long as someone else is in charge, failure can be explained away. But when you take full responsibility, success or failure belongs to you alone. That weight is heavy, but it is also the only way to grow strong. Another powerful fear is the fear of failure. A child who tries something and fails often bursts into tears, convinced that the world has ended. Adults may not cry openly, but they avoid risks for the same reason. They think, what if I try and it doesn't work? So they don't try at all. Infantilism thrives on this avoidance, creating a life of hesitation, half-beginnings, and endless waiting for the right moment. But ironically, this fear of failure creates the greatest failure of all, the failure to live fully. Closely tied to this is the fear of judgment. Many people never truly act as themselves because they are terrified of how others will see them. They fear disapproval, ridicule, or rejection. As children, we learn quickly that acceptance means safety and rejection feels like danger. But when this carries into adulthood, it becomes crippling. A person trapped by this fear constantly adjusts themselves to please others, losing authenticity in the process. They remain forever dependent on external approval, like a child who cannot stand alone. There is also the fear of discomfort. A child resists chores, homework, or anything unpleasant because it feels unfair. Many adults carry this same resistance, avoiding anything that demands effort, discipline, or sacrifice. They chase comfort as if it were the highest value, forgetting that comfort often breeds stagnation. Growth lives on the other side of discomfort. By avoiding it, we avoid the very experiences that could make us stronger. Another hidden fear is the fear of freedom. This may sound strange, because freedom is what most people claim to desire. But true freedom means you alone are responsible for your life. It means no one else to blame, no one else to lean on, no one else to carry your burdens. That kind of freedom can feel terrifying. Infantilism avoids it by clinging to structures where others decide, whether it's family, workplace, or relationships. But without embracing the fear of freedom, you cannot truly live as an adult. It is important to recognize that these fears are not weaknesses unique to you, they are human. Everyone feels them. The difference is whether you allow them to dictate your life. Infantilism is, in essence, the attempt to run away from these fears by pretending they don't exist. But the fears remain, shaping every decision in the background. The paradox of fear is that it shrinks when faced directly and grows when avoided. A child hides from the shadow in the dark, trembling under the blanket. But the moment the light is turned on, the shadow disappears. Adulthood means turning on the light. It means saying, yes, I am afraid of failure, judgment, and discomfort, but I will act anyway. That simple act of facing fear transforms it from a monster into a challenge. If you look back at your own life, you will likely notice moments when fear kept you small. Perhaps you avoided applying for a job because you feared rejection. Perhaps you stayed silent in a relationship because you feared conflict. Perhaps you abandoned a goal because you feared it would be too hard. Each time, the fear won, and the child within you remained in control. But you can also remember moments when you faced fear, when you spoke up, acted despite doubt, or endured discomfort. Those are the moments when your adult self took the lead. The path forward, then, is not to eliminate fear but to change your relationship with it. Fear is not a signal to stop, it is a signal that you are moving toward growth. If something scares you, it usually means it matters. Infantilism runs from fear, maturity walks through it. Begin practicing this shift in small ways. Do one thing each day that makes you slightly uncomfortable. Speak up when you would normally stay quiet. Tackle a task you usually postpone. Admit a mistake instead of hiding it. These actions may feel minor, but they send a powerful message to yourself. I am not ruled by fear. Over time, this message builds confidence. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act in spite of it. And courage is what separates adults from children. Children are paralyzed by fear. Adults feel it, acknowledge it, and move forward anyway. Infantilism may disguise itself as comfort, but beneath it lies fear, fear of responsibility, failure, judgment, discomfort, and freedom. Once you see this clearly, you can no longer pretend it is harmless. The child inside you will always whisper to avoid fear. But the adult within you must answer, I see the fear, and I choose to grow. Chapter 5. One of the most important parts of growing up is learning how to take responsibility for your own life. At first glance, this sounds simple. Of course, every adult knows they are responsible for their actions. But knowing and living it are two very different things. Many people intellectually agree with the idea of responsibility while, in practice, they avoid it at every turn. This avoidance is the essence of infantilism. Responsibility means ownership. It is not only about what you do but also about what you failed to do. It means admitting that your choices, your habits, your decisions, and your reactions create the life you are living right now. A child blames circumstances. The toy broke, the other child started it, the teacher is unfair. Adults who haven't outgrown this mindset do the same but with bigger words. The boss is toxic, the system is corrupt, the world is against me. Of course, external difficulties exist, but hiding behind them leaves you powerless. Responsibility is the refusal to live powerless. One way infantilism shows itself is in the refusal to own mistakes. Many people will do anything to avoid saying, I was wrong. They defend, justify, and twist reality just to protect their fragile sense of self. But this childish defense only traps them. When you deny mistakes, you also deny yourself the chance to learn from them. Admitting fault is not weakness, it is maturity. It is the sign of someone who values growth more than image. Another avoidance is seen in decision-making. Making decisions means taking responsibility for the outcome. That is why many people procrastinate, endlessly gather information, or wait for someone else to decide for them. It feels safer to stand on the sidelines. But safety is an illusion. By refusing to decide, you are still making a decision, the decision to let life pass by without your direction. Responsibility demands that you step forward, choose, and accept the results. Taking responsibility also applies to emotions. Many people blame others for how they feel. You made me angry. She ruined my day. He made me insecure. This is the language of a child. The truth is that while others can influence you, they do not control your reactions. Your anger, sadness, or insecurity are yours to process and manage. A mature adult says, "I feel this way, and it is my task to handle it." By doing so, they reclaim the power to choose their emotional responses instead of being dragged by them. It is important to clarify, responsibility does not mean control over everything. You cannot control the weather, the economy, or other people's actions. You cannot prevent every misfortune. Responsibility simply means you take charge of how you respond. Life may hand you difficulties, but your reaction, whether you rise or collapse, is yours. Infantilism avoids this truth by pretending that external forces dictate everything. Maturity accepts that while you cannot control all of life, you can control yourself. The moment you fully embrace responsibility, something changes. You stop waiting for rescue. You stop blaming others for your stagnation. You stop feeling powerless. Instead, you begin to act. You realize that no matter how unfair life has been, the next step is always in your hands. This shift is liberating. It removes the endless excuses and replaces them with possibilities. Think of someone who constantly blames others. Their life feels stuck because every problem is caused by someone else. Now think of someone who takes responsibility. They may face the same difficulties, but they approach them differently. Instead of complaining about the boss, they improve their skills or search for a better opportunity. Instead of blaming the partner, they work on communication. Instead of blaming the world, they ask, "What can I do today?" That difference in mindset creates a completely different life. Of course, responsibility is heavy at first. It feels easier to play the victim, to believe life is unfair, to hope someone else will fix things. But that ease comes at a cost: stagnation, resentment, and helplessness. True responsibility may feel heavier, but it builds strength. Like lifting weights, the burden makes you stronger. To grow, you must begin practicing responsibility in small, consistent ways. Start by admitting one mistake without excuse. Make one decision without waiting for approval. Own one emotional reaction instead of blaming others. These steps may seem minor, but they are acts of maturity. Each one is proof that you are no longer handing your life away. Responsibility is not about being perfect, it is about being accountable. It is about standing in front of the mirror and saying, "My life is my creation. If I want it to change, I must change." That realization is not easy, but it is the foundation of adulthood. Without it, you remain stuck in infantilism. With it, you finally begin to grow. Chapter 6. One of the most painful realizations about infantilism is that it often hides behind a mask of innocence. People who avoid responsibility may convince themselves that they are simply being carefree, playful, or lighthearted. They cling to the idea that growing up means losing joy, and so they resist it with everything they have. But the truth is, maturity doesn't take away your joy, it gives you a deeper, richer kind of fulfillment. The difference is that joy in adulthood is not handed to you like candy. It is cultivated through choices, effort, and the willingness to endure discomfort. At the heart of this chapter lies a simple truth: growth is uncomfortable. And it's supposed to be. A child avoids discomfort, an adult learns to face it. If you always choose the easier path, the one with the least resistance, you trap yourself in the cycle of immaturity. Progress requires friction. To become someone capable of standing tall in life, you must develop the ability to tolerate what is hard, what is tedious, and what is uncertain. Consider how often people procrastinate on important tasks because they don't feel like it. That phrase alone is the anthem of infantilism. Children act based on moods, adults act based on values. If you only wait until motivation arrives, you will remain stuck at the level of someone who waits for permission. Maturity means learning to do the thing even when you don't want to. It's about understanding that feelings are temporary, but consequences are lasting. There is a kind of dignity in doing hard things. Think of people who wake up early to exercise, even when they'd rather stay in bed. Or someone who studies late at night after working all day, because they believe in their future. These actions may not feel pleasurable in the moment, but they build a foundation of strength that children cannot comprehend. Each time you endure discomfort for the sake of a greater outcome, you grow a little taller inside. Infantilism thrives in the culture of shortcuts. It whispers that you deserve happiness without effort, recognition without contribution, comfort without sacrifice. It promises you an easier life, but in reality, it chains you to dependency. Adults who fall into this trap often feel resentful, believing that the world owes them something. They become frustrated when life doesn't hand them what they expect, forgetting that genuine growth always comes with sweat, mistakes, and persistence. The antidote to this trap is a mindset shift, to stop asking, "How can I avoid discomfort?" and start asking, "What discomfort is worth enduring for the person I want to become?" That question alone begins to reshape your relationship with growth. Suddenly, discomfort is not the enemy, it is the teacher. It is the very thing that chisels you into someone capable of more. Imagine if you looked at discomfort as training. Every time you face boredom, frustration, or challenge, you are strengthening your resilience muscles. Just as lifting weights breaks down muscle fibers so they can rebuild stronger, discomfort in life tears down your comfort zone so it can expand. Without that tension, you remain small. But with it, you become capable of things you once thought impossible. Infantilism also shows up in how people respond to failure. A child often throws a tantrum when things don't go their way, or blames someone else. Many adults do the same, only with more sophisticated language. They make excuses, shift responsibility, or give up altogether. But a mature person sees failure not as a personal attack, but as a necessary part of growth. Each failure is feedback, a clue pointing toward what to adjust. The moment you accept failure as part of the process rather than proof of your inadequacy, you begin to outgrow the childish mindset that keeps you stuck. To practice this in everyday life, you must lean into small acts of maturity. Finish the tasks you start, even when they feel boring. Take responsibility for mistakes instead of blaming others. Say no to the urge of instant gratification when you know a long-term reward is waiting. These are not glamorous habits, but they are the building blocks of adulthood. It's also important to recognize that maturity is not about perfection. No one becomes a flawless adult overnight. Even the most disciplined people sometimes feel like children inside. The difference is that they don't let those impulses control their lives. They acknowledge them, smile at them, and then choose to act differently. That's the true sign of growth, not eliminating childish desires, but rising above them. Growing up is not about abandoning joy, freedom, or creativity. It is about learning to balance those qualities with responsibility, discipline, and resilience. When you step into maturity, you discover that joy feels sweeter when you've earned it. Freedom feels real when it is supported by stability. Creativity flourishes when it is rooted in discipline. The irony is that you gain more of the childlike spirit you fear losing, but now it is carried by the strength of an adult. If you want to stop being trapped in infantilism, you must train yourself to welcome discomfort, to see responsibility not as a burden but as an honor, and to accept that real growth is messy. This is not a quick transformation, it is a lifelong process. But each step you take toward maturity brings you closer to the version of yourself that is no longer waiting for someone else to rescue you. Instead, you become the one who builds your life with your own two hands. The lesson here is simple: growth will not happen in your comfort zone. The longer you cling to the safety of childlike avoidance, the smaller your world becomes. But the moment you decide to endure what is difficult, to carry the weight that scares you, and to keep moving forward even when it hurts, you finally begin to grow up. Chapter 7. There comes a point in every person's journey where they must confront the uncomfortable truth: nobody is coming to save them. For those trapped in infantilism, this is perhaps the hardest lesson to learn. Children live with the expectation that someone older, stronger, or wiser will step in when things go wrong. They cry, and someone comforts them. They fail, and someone fixes the mess. This reliance is natural for a child, but when carried into adulthood, it becomes a trap. Waiting for rescue keeps you small. Choosing responsibility makes you free. It's tempting to imagine that life will somehow organize itself without your effort. Many people secretly believe that luck, fate, or a benefactor will appear at the right moment to carry them forward. This is the fantasy of the perpetual child, the belief that external forces will arrange everything while they stay passive. But life, as every mature person eventually discovers, rewards those who take action, not those who wait. One of the clearest signs of infantilism is blaming others for the state of your life. It is easier to say, "I can't succeed because of my parents, my boss, the government, the economy," than to admit that your choices have shaped your reality. Blame is a way to avoid the discomfort of responsibility. But here's the paradox: the more you avoid responsibility, the less power you have to change anything. The moment you accept full ownership, you step into real control. Responsibility may feel heavy at first, but it is the only weight that makes you stronger. Think of responsibility as the backbone of adulthood. Without it, you bend under every pressure. With it, you stand upright no matter what life throws at you. Taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything that happens. It means acknowledging that your response is always within your power. You cannot control every event, but you can control your reaction, your choices, and your next step. Many people resist this idea because they fear it means they'll lose comfort. But ironically, the opposite is true. When you take responsibility, you gain freedom. Imagine two people: one avoids responsibility, constantly shifting blame, waiting for others to decide. The other owns their choices, makes decisions, and accepts the consequences. Who is more free? The one who acts, even if imperfectly. Responsibility and freedom are not opposites, they are partners. Another mark of infantilism is dependency. Children rely on their parents not just for survival but for emotional validation. Adults who remain stuck in infantilism often seek the same kind of dependency in relationships, workplaces, or even governments. They crave someone else to guide them, protect them, or give them direction. But dependency comes at a cost. You trade autonomy for security. And over time, that security suffocates you. Maturity requires learning to stand on your own feet. This doesn't mean rejecting help or refusing cooperation. It means not leaning so heavily on others that you collapse without them. True independence is not about isolation. It is about knowing you can carry yourself even when no one is holding your hand. A powerful exercise is to ask yourself, in which areas of my life am I still waiting to be rescued? Is it financial stability, where you hope someone will hand you opportunities instead of creating them? Is it relationships, where you wait for the perfect partner instead of working on becoming someone worth partnering with? Is it personal growth, where you expect a teacher, mentor, or program to transform you instead of doing the hard inner work yourself? Identifying these areas is the first step toward breaking the chains of infantilism. One of the most liberating shifts happens when you stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do about this?" That single change in language turns you from a passive observer into an active participant in your own life. You stop being a child waiting for rescue and start being an adult shaping reality. It's important to acknowledge, though, that this transition can feel frightening. Responsibility strips away excuses, and excuses often feel comforting. They protect you from facing your own potential. To grow up means giving up the illusion that life is supposed to be easy. It means carrying burdens you once avoided, facing fears you once denied, and doing things you once thought were impossible. But here is the hidden gift. Responsibility is not just a burden, it is a path to pride. Think about the feeling of finishing something difficult entirely on your own. That sense of strength cannot be given to you by others. It is earned through responsibility. When you build your own life, you gain confidence that no one can take away. And that confidence, unlike the fragile validation of infantilism, becomes an anchor in every storm. The greatest danger of infantilism is not immaturity itself, it is the wasted years. The longer you wait for someone to rescue you, the more time you lose. And time is the one resource you cannot reclaim. Growing up means deciding, here and now, that you will no longer postpone your adulthood. That you will no longer wait for rescue. That you will carry the weight of your own life, even if it feels heavy at first, because carrying it is what will finally make you strong. Responsibility is not punishment. It is an invitation to step into the fullness of who you are meant to be. Only when you accept that no one is coming to save you do you begin the journey of truly saving yourself. Chapter 8. If there is one thing that reveals the difference between a child and an adult, it is how they deal with limits. A child wants everything now, every toy, every sweet, every desire met without delay. When they can't have it, they scream, cry, or sulk. This impatience is natural at that stage of life. But when someone carries the same expectation into adulthood, it becomes one of the clearest signs of infantilism, the hunger for instant gratification. Our modern world feeds this hunger. With a few clicks, you can order food, watch a movie, buy new clothes, or get attention on social media. Everything is designed for speed and convenience. While technology itself is not the problem, the mindset it encourages can trap you. When you get used to everything arriving instantly, you forget that the most meaningful things in life, growth, relationships, mastery, financial independence, take time. You can't microwave maturity. Infantilism whispers, "Why wait? Take the shortcut." It tells you to grab pleasure now, deal with consequences later. But later always comes, and it often arrives with a cost far heavier than the effort you avoided. Adults who chase only instant gratification often find themselves stuck, broke because they spend more than they earn, unhealthy because they choose comfort over discipline, lonely because they avoid the work of building real intimacy. The mature path is about delayed gratification, the ability to resist a smaller reward now for the sake of a greater reward later. This is not just about self-denial, it is about strategy. When you can control your impulses, you gain control over your future. When you can wait, you can build. Consider the story of saving money. A child spends everything the moment they get it, unable to imagine the future. An adult, however, understands that putting aside money, investing it, and waiting allows wealth to grow. The same principle applies to everything. A child seeks pleasure now. An adult invests in tomorrow. Patience is not weakness, it is strength under control. It is the art of staying steady when the easy option tempts you. Think of someone training for a marathon. The daily runs are not glamorous, and the temptation to skip them is strong. But the runner knows that each mile of discipline builds toward a finish line that will mean more than any single moment of comfort. The same is true in life. The finish line is worth more than the shortcut. Of course, this does not mean rejecting all joy or pleasure. Growing up is not about punishing yourself, it is about balance. Instant pleasures can be enjoyed, but they should never control you. When a child eats candy, they don't think about cavities or health. When an adult enjoys something sweet, they do so with awareness and limits. The difference is not the candy itself, the difference is perspective. A useful exercise is to ask yourself, where in my life am I trading long-term rewards for short-term comfort? Is it in my health, where I choose fast food instead of cooking? Is it in my work, where I procrastinate instead of pushing through the task? Is it in my relationships, where I avoid difficult conversations for the sake of temporary peace? Identifying these patterns helps you see where infantilism still holds power over you. The power of maturity lies in shifting your focus from now to later. When you choose later, you are not denying yourself happiness, you are building a deeper, lasting version of it. A child wants fireworks today. An adult builds a fire that keeps them warm for years. And here's the surprising thing, delayed gratification actually increases your sense of joy. When you work for something, wait for it, and earn it, the satisfaction is richer. A paycheck feels different when you've labored for it. A relationship feels deeper when you've invested time and patience. Success feels sweeter when it comes after struggle. Joy that is earned, not given, is joy that stays. This is why discipline and patience are so closely linked to maturity. Without them, you remain at the mercy of every impulse, like a leaf blown by the wind. With them, you become anchored. You don't deny life's pleasures, you enjoy them with wisdom. And you know when to put them aside for something greater. Infantilism thrives on impatience, maturity thrives on endurance. Every time you resist the urge for instant gratification, you strengthen the adult within you. Every time you choose to wait, to work, to endure, you move one step closer to the version of yourself who is no longer a child in disguise. So the lesson is simple but powerful. Do not chase every sweet that life dangles before you. Instead, build the strength to wait, the patience to endure, and the vision to see beyond the moment. That is how children become adults. That is how instant gratification transforms into lasting fulfillment. Chapter 9. There is another face of infantilism that hides in plain sight, the fear of making decisions. Children look to adults to decide for them what to eat, what to wear, where to go, what is safe, what is not. For a child, this is normal and necessary. But when grown people carry the same avoidance into adulthood, they surrender one of the most essential traits of maturity, the courage to choose. Infantilism thrives in indecision. You see it in the person who endlessly postpones choices, waiting for the perfect moment. You see it in those who constantly ask others for advice, but never commit to a direction. You see it in those who say, "I don't know what I want," as if clarity will arrive from the outside instead of being built from within. Behind all of this lies the same fear, the fear of responsibility. But decision means ownership. When you choose, you declare, "This is my path, and I accept the consequences." That kind of ownership is terrifying to someone who is still stuck in a childlike state. They would rather keep all options open, floating in possibility, than risk failure or regret. But in reality, refusing to decide is itself a decision, the decision to stay small, to stay passive, to let others or circumstances shape your life. Maturity begins the moment you realize that no one can make the big choices for you. Your career, your relationships, your values, your direction, these are not things that can be outsourced. Yes, advice can help, and guidance has its place, but at the end of the day, you must step forward and choose. If you don't, life will choose for you, and you may not like where it takes you. What infantilism hides is that indecision is not protection, it is paralysis. People avoid decisions thinking they are avoiding mistakes. But in reality, by avoiding choices, they guarantee regret. They drift. They waste years waiting for certainty that never arrives. Adults understand that there is no perfect decision. Every path has risk, every choice has trade-offs, and clarity only comes after you act. One of the most empowering shifts in adulthood is accepting that you will make mistakes, and that this is part of the journey. Children fear mistakes because they think it makes them bad. Adults see mistakes as information. Every wrong turn shows you something valuable about yourself and the world. The pain of failure stings, but it also refines. Without mistakes, there is no wisdom. Without risk, there is no growth. Think of the countless people who stayed in jobs they hated because they were too afraid to choose another path. Or those who remained in relationships long after they knew it was wrong, because making the decision to leave felt unbearable. In both cases, the avoidance of choice led to years of quiet suffering. A single decision, though painful in the short term, could have opened the door to a richer, more authentic life. To grow up is to accept that making decisions is not just a task, it is your responsibility. It is how you shape your life instead of letting life shape you. And with each decision, you discover something powerful. You can trust yourself. Even if you stumble, even if the outcome is not perfect, you learn that you are capable of steering your own course. That trust in yourself is one of the most vital marks of maturity. There is also a hidden joy in choosing. Yes, it carries risk, but it also brings freedom. When you commit to a path, you stop scattering your energy across endless possibilities. You pour yourself fully into one thing, and in doing so, you give it the chance to grow. Indecision scatters, decision concentrates. And concentrated effort is where transformation happens. A helpful practice is to stop asking, "What if I choose wrong?" and start asking, "What will I lose if I don't choose at all?" Often, the cost of indecision is far greater than the cost of a wrong decision. Because at least a wrong decision moves you forward. It teaches, it redirects, it sharpens. Indecision only leaves you standing still, watching life pass by. Infantilism clings to the dream of certainty. Maturity embraces uncertainty and chooses anyway. The truth is, you will never have all the information. You will never have a guarantee. But you always have the ability to act, to learn, and to adjust. That is what makes you an adult, not that you always choose perfectly, but that you have the courage to choose at all. So the next time you face a decision, big or small, resist the urge to wait endlessly. Trust that action will teach you more than hesitation ever could. Even if you stumble, you will rise stronger. Because adulthood is not about avoiding mistakes, it is about building the kind of character that grows through them. Chapter 10. We have come to the final chapter, and it is here that the lessons of growth, responsibility, and maturity converge. Infantilism, as we have explored, is not a flaw to be hidden, it is a stage to be recognized, understood, and ultimately outgrown. The child within you may always exist, whispering for comfort, avoidance, or instant gratification. But the adult within you has the power to respond, to act, and to lead your life with intention. By now, you understand that growing up is not about perfection. It is not about never feeling fear, avoiding all mistakes, or rejecting joy. It is about choice. It is about deliberately choosing responsibility over blame, action over procrastination, patience over instant pleasure, and courage over avoidance. Every step you take in this direction strengthens the adult self while still honoring the child who once needed protection. The process of outgrowing infantilism is gradual. It unfolds in small, consistent actions, finishing what you start, making decisions even when uncertain, admitting mistakes without excuses, enduring discomfort for the sake of long-term goals, and taking responsibility for your life. These habits, repeated over time, reshape not just your behavior but your identity. You become someone who no longer waits for rescue, who no longer lets fear dictate choices, who no longer sacrifices growth for temporary comfort. Perhaps the most profound insight is that adulthood is not a destination, it is a practice. Every day offers opportunities to choose differently, to respond with maturity, and to build a life that reflects your values rather than your fears. Some days you will falter. Some days the child inside you will demand attention. That is natural. What matters is that you continue to act, to reflect, and to choose the adult path again and again. Growth is not linear, but it is cumulative. Each conscious choice moves you further away from infantilism and closer to a life of autonomy, strength, and fulfillment. Freedom is both the reward and the responsibility of adulthood. When you take full ownership of your actions, emotions, and decisions, you gain the ability to shape your life intentionally. You are no longer a passive observer but an active creator. And with that freedom comes a new kind of joy, the satisfaction of building something real with your own hands, the pride of facing challenges and overcoming them, and the confidence that comes from knowing you can navigate life on your own terms. Remember, the journey to adulthood does not erase the child within you. That child, with all their curiosity, playfulness, and imagination, remains a part of who you are. The goal is not to destroy that child but to guide them, integrate them, and allow the adult you to lead. When the child and the adult coexist in harmony, you gain both the wonder of youth and the strength of maturity. Infantilism is not a permanent state, it is a set of habits, fears, and patterns that can be changed. The only requirement is willingness to face discomfort, to take responsibility, to make decisions, and to act despite fear. Every choice you make to grow, no matter how small, chips away at the habits that keep you stuck. Over time, those choices compound into a life that reflects your true potential. So, as you close this book, remember this: growth is yours to claim. The adult self you aspire to be is already within you, waiting to be nurtured, strengthened, and trusted. The path may be challenging, but it is also liberating. Each moment is an opportunity to step into maturity, to take charge, and to finally become the person you were always capable of being. The child may still whisper, but now the adult speaks louder. And in that voice lies freedom, responsibility, and the remarkable power to finally grow up.